So epistemologists, as I said, in general study knowledge, justification, and rational belief. They study how we should come to know about the world. Now, there are particular stances that epistemologists have taken on how justification works, how knowledge works, and so on. And one of these stances, a rather extreme stance, is called radical skepticism, or global skepticism. What the radical or global skeptic holds is that knowledge is in fact impossible, and more specifically that justification is in fact impossible, that we can never have justified beliefs, at least about the ordinary physical world. So these beliefs, this skeptical view, is often based on what are called skeptical scenarios. So I'll start out by describing some of these skeptical scenarios. Here's one. This is a scenario the philosopher René Descartes likes to talk about. Here you have a woman, and she's sleeping, and she's dreaming of a beautiful sunset. And here's a question. How will the world look to her if what she's experiencing right now is not a dream? That is, if it's perfectly real. Well, it will look like this. And how will the world look to her if what she's experiencing right now is a dream? Well, it will look just like this. And of course, the same holds for you. Think about whatever it is that you're looking at right now, your visual experience, how it looks to you. What would that experience be like if it were veridical, if it were really happening the way you think it is? Well, it would look as it does. And what would it look like if it isn't veridical, if you're actually just dreaming? Well, it will look exactly the same. That's the idea. Since it would look the same either way, your perceptual experience can't be your evidence that you aren't dreaming right now. Put another way, since it could look either way, your perceptual experience is equally consistent with, the idea goes, both the hypothesis that you're dreaming and the hypothesis that you're not dreaming. So that's a skeptical scenario and the kind of conclusion people draw from it. And then you can ask, if your perceptual experience is equally consistent with both, what's your evidence that you're dreaming as opposed to not? And then the implication is, well, look, you don't really have any. Here's another skeptical scenario, another way to inspire this kind of global skepticism. You can ask, how will the world look right now if what you're experiencing is caused by an external physical world that is the way we typically take the world to be? Well, it will look as it does. And how will it look if instead what you're experiencing right now is caused by an evil demon who wants to manipulate you into believing the world is the way it seems to you when in fact it isn't? Well, it will look exactly the same. Since it would look the same either way, your perceptual experience can't be your evidence that you aren't being deceived right now. That's the idea. But then what could your evidence possibly be? And again, the hint is you couldn't have any, so you can't have justified beliefs about the external world. There's another more recent version of this called The Brain in the Vat. This philosophical thought experiment was the basis for movies like The Matrix. Here you have somebody who's thinking the thought, I'm walking outside in the sun in Tucson, and they're having this kind of visual experience, and that's what's making them think they're walking outside in the sun in Tucson. And we can ask, how will the world look if the basis of this person's experience is a brain being fed stimuli, versus how will it look if it's a brain being fed stimuli where the brain is in a vat, versus if it's a brain in a person's head being fed stimuli by the actual external world? Well, it's going to look the same either way, so what's your evidence? And the idea is you don't have any. So these skeptical scenarios are all basically pointing in the same direction. You don't need to memorize them all. You just need to see that they're all equivalent and then really understand one. And then you can sort of substitute in the one you understand whenever you want to think about the skepticism. Okay, so appealing to those scenarios, one can generate what's called the global skeptical argument. And it goes like this. And I'm just going to use the brain in the vat. You could use dreams. You could use evil demons. It doesn't really matter. So my perceptual experience, how things look to me, sound to me, smell to me, taste to me, feel to me, doesn't support the claim that I'm not a brain in a vat over the claim that I am a brain in a vat. Why? Because it fits equally well with both of those. If my perceptual experience doesn't support one of these claims over the other, then I don't have any evidence that one or the other is true, so I don't have any evidence that I'm not a brain in a vat. Nor do I have any evidence that I am a brain in a vat. But it follows, if I don't have evidence either way, that I don't have evidence that I'm not a brain in a vat. Therefore, since my perceptual experience doesn't support the claim that I'm not a brain in a vat over the claim that I am, and if that's right, then I have no evidence that I'm not, I have no evidence that I'm not a brain in a vat. Well, if I have no evidence that I'm not a brain in a vat, then I have no evidence that I have a body, that there are desks in this room, that there's a computer in this room, that there are trees outside, and so on and so forth. Because the idea goes, if I am a brain in a vat, then I don't have a body, and there aren't desks, and there is no, there are no trees outside, and so on. So I have no evidence that I'm not a brain in a vat. We've concluded that. And if I don't have that kind of evidence, then I don't have any evidence for the kind of ordinary things I think about the world. So therefore, I don't have any evidence that I have a body, that there are trees outside, that there are desks in the room, and so on. Well, if I have no evidence for those claims, then I don't know any of them, because knowledge requires justification, and justification, the idea goes, requires evidence. So I don't know that I have a body, that there are desks in this room, and so on and so forth. More generally, I don't know anything about the external world. Okay? That's the global argument for global skepticism. Notice global skepticism doesn't mean complete skepticism. This argument is consistent with the claim that you know you're having conscious experiences. It's consistent with the claim more generally that you know you have a mind. It's consistent with the claim that you know 1 + 1 = 2. What the argument holds is rather that you can't know anything about the external physical world, at least nothing that's contingent. Okay. We're going to stop there, and in the next video, we'll continue with this argument.